Thank you, everyone. It's absolutely a pleasure to join you, and I wish I was there in person, but we'll try to keep this conversation as stimulating, interesting, and exciting. The AI space has been talked about a lot. I think all of us have been dabbling in it for a while, and as I think Ashwin touched on, AI was very pervasive and has been very pervasive in all our lives, and generative AI has put it in an accelerated mode beyond what any of us have expected. So my goal over the next 10 minutes and even through Q&A is to really give you construct of what we're seeing, where we're seeing the market move, but also to maybe be a bit provocative on how we should be thinking differently. I do not presume to tell the audience what to do. I think all of you have tremendous experience and have done amazing things in your industries and businesses, and you are here because you're August leaders. But I think collectively, it takes taking a few minutes to maybe think about the opportunity is supremely valuable. I'm going to share a couple of slides just to get the construct going for us to think about this, and we will use that just to frame the conversation. So please let me know when you can see it, and I will thumbs up. Okay. All right. The big thing I want everyone to focus on, and this is really important because the kickoff, as folks touched on, is what is the opportunity and how real is it and what are we seeing? The slide I put in front of you is to just level set a core point. I've had the good fortune of meeting over 400 companies around the world, CEOs and boards, and have extensively engaged in the role of how enterprises are looking at transforming, leveraging AI. And this is early discussions to mature POCs to even getting into execution mode. But the reason this is happening, and this is super important, is the market opportunity. Conservatively, there is about a $16 trillion opportunity. And it's fundamentally, and I want this as a framing reference because I think as you work through your roundtables in the next 2 days for you to think about this, it's fundamentally in two buckets. The first one is labor productivity. Labor productivity is anticipated to be close to a $7 trillion opportunity. And the second is the construct of an increase in consumer demand for what each of us do. And the increase in consumer demand is meant to be a $9 trillion opportunity. So I want to use those two as anchor points as we sort of walk through all of the opportunity spaces. Every use case, every implementation, every success story that's happened has happened in sort of this framework of how you move forward. Now, when we talk about productivity, I really like the slide that Constellation Research put together because it frames it very nicely for everything I'm sure each of us faces. And the construct is, if I have to hit these labor productivity measures, or I have to look at what this labor productivity means, or more importantly, and I think as the speaker earlier touched on, how do you measure and define what productivity is? It's actually not the technology, it's how we use the technology to get the outcomes we want. And so defining what the worker, the average worker in each of our organizations is supremely important. And this is a combination of your expertise, knowing technology, your human resources teams that know how to go and look at the role and profile of people you hire, as well, and more importantly, is your training organizations. There was a mention in the earlier conversation about investing in talent. I think the biggest thing we collectively as a group need to do, and I'd welcome you to debate this and discuss this in the next few days, is we need to invest in education. Because if we get into a talent warfare of going and looking for AI talent, this is a new and fast evolving space. And organizations that become learning organizations are going to accelerate the fastest. The scope of an AI-enabled knowledge worker is very imminent. We are seeing this actively across leading organizations. I know companies that are looking at accelerating product roadmaps by using AI-enabled assists for software development. I know companies that are looking at improving product experience by going through timelines and really accelerating pace. And more importantly, I have companies that are creating personas of certain activities that entry-level analysts or entry-level researchers perform and are using AI to improve the accuracy and efficiency of what that's done so that they can retrain or train their new hires in very different ways. This is all happening today. So it's super important for all of you as you're thinking about this. And this is, I think, something you are going to debate at length on how you're positioning what the worker and the worker experience is going to be as you move forward. So as you're thinking about the POC, shaping this narrative becomes super valuable. Now, you've all seen these use cases, and I am pretty sure if we poll the room, every one of you has either touched on some use cases, worked on use cases, have had POCs, or are probably looking at scale. And that's wonderful, by the way. That's wonderful. But let's talk a little bit about where you're seeing maturity and how different folks are adopting it. I stuck this image in there because customer service is the one thing that is front and center for a lot of folks. But the nuance of customer service and the biggest shift that generative AI has brought to us that sometimes get lost in the conversation of is it hype or is it not hype, is it is fundamentally going to change the way we interact with the consumer. Never since the web has that happened. And for us, the monumental opportunity is how do we then reshape 2 decades of how we operated? And that's not easy. But that's also a massive opportunity. And so this whole narrative of bringing the human touch back to digital, it's how do you create a human-like experience through AI to drive the outcomes very differently is where you're going to see the differentiation. Every industry is progressing around the world. Every industry is looking at this in a material way. And so my sort of maybe call to action, which if I'm repeating and preaching to the choir, please forgive me, is this is when we have to seize the opportunity. In entertainment, content creation systems are critical, as you well know. One of the biggest feedback that I got from over 15 of the top media and entertainment CIOs is their challenge supporting their organizations is not about doing it more efficiently, but for them, productivity is about speed. It's speed because all of us who now watch Netflix or Hotstar or any of these popular mediums want to consume new and fresh content at a much faster pace. And so when you have content creation at that pace, the process at how you quickly generate technology, the process by which you do rendering, everything has to speed up. And AI and generative AI is playing a massive role, and there is tremendous work underway to speed this up, and we're seeing that today. In retail, we've always had personalized recommendation systems, but this is, again, getting that human interface and touch into that digital experience to drive accelerated adoption. We had a customer who actually had their IT team. This will be entertaining and interesting for you. For a major fashion company, their IT team decided to show their creatives, their designers, how they could build an entire fashion line with generative AI. And 8 months ago, not now, 8 months ago, they actually came up with an entire line using generative AI and actually had a ramp show set up for their creatives. This was the IT department. The reason I give you that example is that's the power of this technology, and what they did in a very clever way was they wanted their business to wake up and see the opportunity of how this technology could be powerful and how it could really drive value. I tell you, the creatives are very amused, but it got them thinking in a much more meaningful way. In manufacturing, it's now about looking at speeding up process and empowering the average worker in a manufacturing environment very differently. The challenge manufacturing is facing, and we've heard this around the world, is not the standard problems of predictive maintenance or uptime or downtime. We know all these. Everyone in this room knows this well, that these are challenges we've been working with. The fundamental challenge and the theme that every manufacturing company is coming up with is saying the new worker coming in, he or she does not want to operate the same way as was done 20 years ago, and they want a different sets of tools and capabilities. I'll give you another point to think about. When you look at the number of people using AI and generative AI specifically, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's Gemini, whether it's any of the other tools and capabilities, whether it's Amazon Q, you think about all these services, open source models. They are predicting that over 60 to 70% of people already, and the younger population already are using these tools. So you're going to increasingly have a workforce that's coming in that's going to be using AI augmentation as a given. And so how do we then start to think about this very differently? In financial services, I mean, you see fraud detection and financial crime prevention, but I already know of companies that have built out a virtual digital research analyst that can perform all the core research functions to augment what they need to do. I have an organization that's actually looked at how they go and create analysis in a real-time, meaningful way so that their more senior analysts stay in the organization and don't leave, because that's their biggest attrition issue. So use cases and solving use cases drive productivity is very important. Again, remember the two big levers you always want to measure against that the CEOs and the boards are caring about are productivity and new consumer demand. And so lining those up to those are what's driving success. I wanted to touch a little bit on what do we as AMD stand for, and why do we care, and why we have a point of view. AMD has been very, very consistent throughout its history about making sure that we deliver compute for all of the core business needs that the world sees to really advance innovation and imagination. And this is why we believe that across the spectrum of how we interact with technology, be that a workstation, be that an endpoint when we're driving a car or we're looking at something else, be that edge and embedded, be that cloud, be that on-premise, across the space, we have to make sure the compute that you consume is helping you achieve the goals that you care for. So I really encourage you. I saw as the video spanned my friendly and very smart team sitting at the back. Please do meet with them and probe them. Compute does matter. A strong compute partner that partners with you for the outcomes you want is super critical. We very humbly believe we are building a very strong foundation that supports the open ecosystem and innovation in an accelerated way. And we'd love to talk to you a bit more about that, but also more importantly, learn about how you are solving for these in a financial outcome way. Now, I said generative AI and AI is happening and it's real. I believe this is only going to scale. I am super bullish on this, and I would encourage you to lean in. This technology is rapidly evolving. There is more and more investment going into this space, and the adopters that adopt this fast and with speed are going to see tremendous gains. There is a lot of noise, but the noise comes from usually people looking at this technology in pace and then saying, well, how do I adopt this, or do I see the value? The standard guidances of having an ROI, making sure that you're making the right investments, and knowing your organization and how you change it come inherently from experience. But when you couple experience with innovation, brilliant things happen. There's work that we've done with Lumi, Europe's largest supercomputer, that will show you how we are solving for real problems. For those of you who love sports and who like the F1, you know that Formula One is probably the most technologically advanced organization in the world. And they looked at aerodynamics back in the 70s as an opportunity to increase milliseconds of speed to drive the outcomes required. And then we have an example of how even on simple things like food inspection and speeding up food inspection during a time we were going through the pandemic on things that we did with AI. So this is all wonderful work that I'm sure you're doing and we're doing. But generative AI gives us the opportunity to accelerate it at the next level. So I really encourage all of you to think about that. We're going to play a video on Lumi just so you can see some of the work that we are doing in partnership with Lumi and with HPE. And then we'll open it up to questions. But thank you again for your time.